You ever wonder what a backpacker brings with him on a long distance through hike? Stay tuned and I'll tell you. Welcome back. I want to show you what I brought in my backpack on my 2,653.1 mile trek of the Pacific Crest Trail. And today I want to show you what gear I brought with me, the gear I started off with, and then the gear that I switched to, and the gear that I finished up with there at the northern terminus. Now, let me just first of all say that this is not a, if you don't use this gear, you're going to fail. And I'm also not saying that my way is the best way, but I am saying that these are the things that help me cope with the things that I had to face in the desert, the things I had to face in the Sierra, and then in Oregon, Washington. My hike of the Pacific Crest Trail took 163 days, nearly 5.5 months. But I got to learn my gear a pretty good bit in that 5.5 months. And to be honest with you, I thought that I had my gear all dialed in when I took off. Some of those things that I thought I had dialed in did not really work for me. And so I had to swap out some things. In these videos, I want to show you not only the gear that I swapped out to, but I want to show you why, or tell you why, and the reason why I did go to another gear. And it's not because of what you think. And by the way, let me say this again. I want to emphasize this. I'm not the expert. If you have gear that works for you, fine. Take it on your through hike and take it on a section hike or maybe an overnight hike with you. If it works for you, then go with it. This is all the equipment that I brought with me as I started my PCT trek from Mexico, from Campo, California. I'm going to be going over each category and each item that I started with, and then go over some of the items that I replaced and as I finished there on the Canadian border. So I thought I'd just give you an overview of all the stuff that I started with in Campo, California. This is all the gear that I finished the PCT with as I reached the border of Canada and the northern terminus. Some of the gear I swapped out because it was lighter than what I started with. Some of it failed. Different reasons why I swapped out the gear that I did and why I chose what I chose. And so again, I'm going to be going over each item, each category in detail, and showing you what I started with and what I switched out to, and the reason why. And again, all of it was not just because it was lighter. There was other reasons why. So I'm going to give you those reasons why I swapped out for the different gear. But this is an overview of everything that I finished my PCT hike. I want to give you some philosophies that I have followed when I went to pick out gear that helped me on my trip. First of all, don't be afraid to adapt and to evolve. You evolve as a hiker as you go along. If you've been hiking for some time, like I have, think about the gear that you started out with when you first started in your, quote, career of hiking. I'll never forget the first time that I went out with my two boys. I think, if I'm not mistaken, David was 11 and Daniel was 9. And we went to Point Reyes over just north of San Francisco or west of San Francisco, and we went on an overnight backpacking trip. We only had one tent, and so it was pretty easy, but we brought a big lantern. I think we strapped it to Daniel's back or whatever. And we had one of those big Coleman stoves, you know, the kind that you go car camping with. Now, bear in mind, we were going backpacking in the wilderness with all this stuff. And I think we strapped it to David's back. Can you imagine carrying all, and oh my goodness, the tent that we had? I think it was like a 20-man tent or whatever, but it was heavy as all get out. And so think about the way that you have evolved as a backpacker, as a hiker, and you're always evolving. You're always finding new equipment that is more efficient than the equipment that you do have. So don't be afraid to adapt. Don't be afraid to adopt different gear. Don't be afraid to evolve into a more efficient backpacker. You're always learning as a hiker. You're always, as I said again, you're always evolving into a more efficient, more proficient hiker as you go along. I was finishing up my Pacific Crest Trail hike just about 30 miles from the Canadian border, and I was still learning things about through hiking, and I was still looking at more efficient gear as I was finishing up. And so you're always evolving. You're always trying to be more efficient with your gear. And so don't be afraid to adapt and to adopt and to evolve into a more efficient hiker. The next thing I want to say is get some ideas from other hikers. You know, I'm always wanting to look in their pack and say, what you got in there? And you know, people get ideas from me. I get ideas from other people. And so, again, find out from other hikers what they use and whether they like it or they don't like it or whether they're going to change it out or whatever. Now, one way you can do it is to go on YouTube and to go and find out what other hikers are using on YouTube. Now, you've got to be careful about that because sometimes those hikers, no matter how influential they are or how popular they are, they may be getting paid for recommending a certain type of gear. And so you have to be careful about that. Another thing you need to be careful about is they can afford a particular gear, whereas you may be on a tight budget and can't afford it. And so, again, find out what other hikers are using and get some ideas from them. Now, what works for them may not work for you. And so, again, try it out. Sometimes when I would hike with someone on the Pacific Crest Trail, I would find out what they were using, and I would even try out what they were using to see if it would work for me. And so again, get some ideas from other hikers, but it doesn't mean that you're going to change all of your gear out and go with what one particular hiker uses. Now, the next thing I want to give you is something that's very, very important. And that is, gear should be multi-purpose. In other words, don't let gear just be for one particular purpose, and that's why you bring it. I'll give you a good example. Trekking poles is a very good example. I used to didn't like trekking poles. In fact, you're going to find out where I only took one trekking pole with me when I started off in the desert. The reason why is because the tent that I brought with me had poles in it, and so basically all I needed was one trekking pole. I soon got another tent, and again, I'll tell you the reason why, and I'll explain to you which tent I traded it out with. But the tent that I purchased used trekking poles as the poles instead of a separate pole system. So not only were the poles being used to steady me as I trekked down the trail as I went down the trail, and water crossings, steady water crossings and things like that. But it also was used, the trekking poles were also used as poles for my tent. Again, multi-purpose. Another example is this cell phone that I used. I had the iPhone X, but I used it for my navigational app. I had the Gut Hooks app on my phone, but I also used it as a camera. When I first started backpacking, I would use a separate camera, a little Nikon point-and-shoot camera I used to take with me. And then I thought to myself, why am I taking this camera when my phone, the camera on my phone, takes just as good of pictures, if not better pictures, than this Nikon point-and-shoot camera did. And so I left it at home. I just carried that one thing, my camera, my phone, and it was used for multi-purpose. Now, the last thing I want to give you is choose efficiency. When it comes to gear selection, choose efficiency over weight. Now, I know that it goes totally against our backpacking philosophy of trying to get as light as you can, but let me say that efficiency over weight is the way to go. Now, what do I mean by that? Let me give you a good example. I started off with one of the most popular sleeping pads on the market, the Thermarest, I think it's called Neo Air X Lite, I think, or something like that. But it's one of the lightest pads on the market. I started off with that pad in the desert, but I was always rolling off of it. It was not comfortable. It was very, very noisy. If you listen to any of the reviews on this particular pad, it's very noisy. And so finally, I think when I got to the Sierras, I think it was there, I traded it out for the Sea to Summit ultralight insulated pad. It's an orange pad, and it's got little baffles on it and everything, but it gave me so much better sleep at night. And so I think it came in at almost a pound. I'm not really sure exactly where it was, but I think it was almost a pound. And so I picked a heavier or a sleeping pad that weighed more than the Thermarest pad, because it was more efficient and I got a better night's sleep. So lighter equipment does not mean more efficient equipment. Choose efficiency over weight. If you've not done it yet, be sure and check out the videos that I have published on my Pacific Crest Trail hike, and you'll see some examples of the gear that I had on my hike and how efficient it was when I did the hike. As I said before, go to any of the videos of my Pacific Crest Trail hike and go to the description and look at the gear list that I published on each one of the sections of the Pacific Crest Trail, the desert section, the Sierra section, the NorCal section, Oregon section, the Washington section, and you'll see a list of all the gear that I brought and the weight that was associated with that particular piece of gear. I hope these ideas and these philosophies have helped you out, whether you're a section hiker, a car camper, an overnight hiker, or a hiker that is wanting to take the plunge and go on the long distance trails across the country. I hope this helped you out, and I hope that you'll be more efficient when it comes to gear selection. And so, until then, I'll see you